tonight is our second week of our Parents Exposing the Culture Wars in the Classroom webinar. This is a 5-week series. Last week was our first week, and we had a great presentation from Lisa Logan, a Utah mom who had extensively studied social and emotional learning. She had a very dynamic, powerful presentation, and Zach will be telling you how you can access that webinar from last week. But this week we are in week 2, reclaiming the role of the parent. So every week we are going to go from one topic that leads into the next topic. Again, my name is Laura Zork. I'm the Director of Education Reform here at FreedomWorks. And for those that don't know, back in 2021, January, we launched B.E.S.T, Building Education for Students Together. Our mission is to ignite a national parent-led movement by educating, mobilizing, and empowering parents across the nation by building coalitions of like-minded organizations and groups and bringing them together so that we can stay empowered together. Tonight, we have, I'm going to say, the dream team with us of parent activists and also individuals that are working in the field of empowering parents. They're no stranger to the empowerment movement. We have Emily Gao, who is a Senior Counsel, VP of Advocacy Strategies with Alliance Defending Freedom for Faith and Justice. We have Nicole Neely, who is the founder of Parents Defending Education. And then we have Rebecca Friedrichs, who is the creator and co-producer of Whose Children Are They? And I hope that you were able to get out to the theaters on March 14th and take advantage of watching this amazing documentary that she had put together. And she is also the co-founder with her husband of Kids and Country. So today our goal is to raise awareness and equip you with the knowledge needed to reclaim and protect your role as parents, understanding the woke culture in education, and know what we're up against. So ladies, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really do think we have the dream team here. So I would love for individuals that might know who you are, but give us 2 or 3 minutes about your organization, what you do, and then we'll start going into the discussion. I'll start with Emily.
Thanks, Laura. It's an honor to be with all of you. You're all really courageous and doing so much great work for parents and kids. So Alliance Defending Freedom is exactly that. We're an alliance of attorneys and we work with policy groups around the country. We defend life, religious freedom, freedom of speech, marriage, the family, and parental rights. We've been defending parental rights for 20 years. We've recently started a Center for Parental Rights to make it official. We're filing lawsuits all over the country on behalf of parents. We also draft legislation for state legislatures and for Congress. And the team that I lead, the advocacy strategy team, we work on shaping the culture to make it easier to win legal victories. So I'm excited to hear more and to tell you more about the work that we're doing.
That's fantastic. Thank you for doing that. I get so many questions about legal advice, and it's great to have individuals that we can guide them to, like you and your organization. Nicole, I'm gonna kick it over to you. I know we know about Parents Defending Education, but give us, for individuals that might not know, give us about 3-minute summary.
Sure. So we are the new kids on the block. We are going to have our 1-year birthday in about a week. And so we try and give parents both the knowledge and the tools they need to get involved to be better advocates for their children. That is anything from knowing your rights guides up through exposing the malfeasance that's taking place in schools around the country. We have a tip line. And so almost everybody who sends us tips, they want to be anonymous. And so we're able to publicize issues that are taking place in people's backyards that they might know about, but now want to have their name attached to. We also, like Emily and ADF, we litigate, we try and encourage people to file comments, but really just give people the tools and the methods to get involved, to be stronger advocates for their children. And obviously getting involved in issues these days is a little bit fraught. And so that can be anything from passing an anonymous tip to us, to creating your own parent group, to running for school board, or anything along those lines. And so we really want to plug people into the proper channels so that they can be stronger and better spokespeople for their children, because
Right.
they're the only ones who will.
Right. Well, you guys are doing fantastic work, and I love working with you. So Rebecca, I see you're on mute, but just give us a little bit. I know that you have two hats you're wearing right now, but give us a little tip on both of what both projects are.
Sure. Well, I taught 28 years in California public schools, and my husband taught 42 years. He was at the university level. He did some middle school. I was at the elementary school level, and we saw corruption our entire careers. And we're a family of teachers. Our Aunt Jelaine, who died at 103, taught in a one-room schoolhouse in Minnesota. She never had one problem in her school. Everything was wonderful. Parents and teachers worked together. So something broke down between when Aunt Jelaine taught and when we started teaching. And so what we discovered, really from when I was a student teacher witnessing another teacher abusing children, and I went to report it and discovered that the teachers unions, the so-called teacher unions, were defending her and protecting her job, and the kids were out of luck. That was 1987. And so I've been fighting the teacher unions ever since, and my husband as well. So what our main goal is to help educate people to understand that it's not most of the teachers out there that are the problem. It's the so-called union who forced teachers to fund them for over 40 years. And myself and 10 other California teachers brought a lawsuit against the teacher unions, against the National Education Association and our state California Teacher Association. And our case blazed the trail for ending forced unionism in the United States of America. The problem is the unions have so much power, and they literally control many states. My state, they have a 2/3 supermajority. They're unbelievably powerful. And so what happened was, even though we were able to work to win people the right to stop funding unions, most people don't know they've been freed. This is government employees, including teachers. So my husband and I felt called to, we tried to find an organization that was doing this, and we couldn't find one. So we felt called to start our own. And so we started For Kids and Country. And our main goal is to educate parents and teachers and other education stakeholders on what's really going on. Our schools are 100% corrupted. They're corrupted by these so-called unions who are pushing a literal communist agenda through our schools. And that's why we have critical race theory and radical sex ed and anti-discipline policies and all these horrible problems in our schools. So our goal is to educate people, which is why I wrote a book called Standing Up to Goliath. And then we thought, my goodness, a lot of people don't read. We need to make a movie. So we also made a movie called Whose Children Are They? That launched on March 14th. And Whose Children Are They is just like in my book. It's a bunch of testimonies of brave teachers and parents and some kids and some frontline experts. And we all expose what's really going on in the schools. Because if people can understand it's the unions, then they can help us to get the unions out. If the unions were out, we wouldn't be having all these problems. Well, and there's special interest groups that ACLU and others who are along with the unions. So that's our goal. And I'm really happy to be here today to talk to y'all. Thank you for being brave, for fighting.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you, Rebecca, for everything that you do. So what I'd like to do is take the webinar that we had last week on social and emotional learning and build upon that. And something that Lisa touched on quite a bit whenever she was talking about CASEL, who is the organization that approves these social and emotional learning programs, is that she kept talking about collectivism and individualism. And so these are two terms that I keep hearing over and over. Mainly I keep hearing collectivism. You don't hear much about individualism anymore. But ladies, I want us to talk about what these definitions are so people understand this, and then it's going to lead us into the next conversation I want to have about the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. And I want us to put the pieces together on this. So who would like to hit off the conversation here and help explain what collectivism is? Do we have Emily? No?
I'll go.
Yeah, I mean, I can say a few words on collectivism. I think
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly how Castle uses it, but I think that the root of so much of the ideology that we see right now, whether it's especially with CRT, it is rooted in the idea that the group is, the group is the source of the identity and it submerges the individual. And so, now children are being told that their identity is based on these characteristics, their race, their sex, sexual orientation, gender identity. And of course, this is, really contrary to the founding ideas of this country, that we are individuals and, we have individual equality. When you have this group dynamic, this collectivist dynamic, which is, more common in socialist and communist countries, it really does erase the idea of every individual being equal, because your worth is dependent on the group that you are part of. Your status is dependent on the group that you're a part of. And so this is, the beginning of a road to, Marxism. I mean, my family's from mainland China. And so my family members went through the Cultural Revolution. We're very familiar with the ideas that you classify people by their group status. Of course, in China, it was your economic status, but here it is now your cultural status. And that is a very dangerous, very anti-American idea.
Yes, that is an excellent description of what that is. And I had pulled up some more information to really go a little further in this. And I looked at what cultures have collectivism, and Korea, China, Japan, Indonesia, Ecuador, India, Brazil, Guatemala, Venezuela are among a few. And then individualism, the countries that have always been known to have individualisms is United States, Australia, Germany, South Africa are a few. But let's, if anyone else has any other comment on that, feel free to jump in. But I want to really go over into this phrase that we hear over and over, especially when I was on the school board. I always heard this: it takes a village to raise a child. Let's talk about that. And because it really does go back to this collectivist type of mentality that we're seeing. So let's open it up with Rebecca. What are your
Sure.
thoughts on this?
Sure. The first thing I'd like to say, just to follow up on what Emily shared, is that America requires self-governance. So if you're going to be a self-governing people, you need to be an individual. That's how republics are that's how they work. So one of the first things that Marxist, socialist, communists do is they work to make everyone think the same, group think, which is part of the collectivist idea, so that you can't self-govern. So that's just one thing. And then as far as it takes a village, well, that's a talking point of the far left. It takes a family to raise a child. God gave children to the family, and the family is required and responsible for educating the child, for raising the child, for teaching the child right from wrong. And it's not the village's responsibility. So it's a nice sounding, talking point. And sure, I mean, when I grew up, the police officer across the street kept an eye on me all the time, and our families worked together. But it takes a family to raise a child. And that's a really key distinction between individualism and collectivism.
Yeah. I mean, I think about the November election, right? What we saw in Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, and this whole pushback against should parents be involved or should they not? And many people said Terry McAuliffe's comments were a gaffe. And I think it wasn't a gaffe, right? That was the mass slipping, because, I mean, let's not forget, Hillary Clinton wrote the book, It Takes a Village, right? And so this is very much a strain of thought. I mean, the Michigan Democratic Party had a Facebook post that they were widely castigated for a few months ago, where they said, not sure where this whole parents should control what is taught in schools because there are kids thing, but parents can send their kids to private school. The purpose of a public education at a public school is not to teach kids only what parents want them to be taught. It is to teach them what society needs them to know. The client of the public school is not the parent, but the entire community, the public. This is where it takes a village leads. They're not your kids, they're ours. So just sit down, keep your mouth shut, and hand them over.
You know, that was astute. And I'd like to add to that. Our American founders never set up a public school system like we have today. It was completely different. Our public school system was teaching individualism. It was teaching morality and, you know, a very outstanding education. What our founders and their children were learning is far superior to what our public schools are teaching today. So you know, Nicole is right. This whole idea of a public school system is definitely a collectivist idea. It's one of the things we address in our movie is that John Dewey, you know, saw this collectivist system, and he and his friends, socialist friends, including the teachers unions, worked to bring that system into our America and create this public schools, modern public school system. It's not working. It's a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry, Zach. At this time, I'd like to play a 30-second video, and this video clip is of Melissa Harris Carey from MSNBC, who and we'll get this geared up for you. But before you start it, Zach, let me just, I'm going to ask this question, ladies. Do we see the rhetoric that this woman is going to spew becoming acceptable among our society? And is it becoming the norm? And I know, Emily, you sent me this morning an article that you had written in the Federalist on March 10th, 2022. So if Zach, you could put this article in the chat, I would highly recommend parents to grab this and read it, because you also mentioned in this, you mentioned the video that we're about to watch. So Zach, if you want to play this, hopefully the volume works on it. Okay. All right.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have, because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families, and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
All right. I don't know about you, but that really angers me when I hear people talk about this and that way, that we need to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents and recognize that kids belong to the whole communities. And that's why I wanted to touch tonight on collectivism, because that's that mindset. And keep in mind, this was back in 2013. When she had created this video. So I'm gonna, Emily, I'm gonna jump over to you. Do you see this type of rhetoric becoming the norm in our public school system, that the child belongs to the community, belongs to the government system?
I think that is the fundamental question right now that this country is wrestling with, which is, to whom do children belong? And that happens to be the title of a book that I cite in the Federalist article by Melissa Muscella, who's a Catholic University professor who wrote really one of the best books on parental rights. And this idea isn't new. You know, what Melissa Harris Perry said, it was actually really similar to a statement in a case, very famous case from the Supreme Court, Meyer versus Nebraska from 1923. And in that case, the justice who wrote the opinion of the court cited something that Plato actually said. And Plato said that he wanted a law that would make children to be common, and no parent to know his own child or any child his parents. And he recommended that officers would take children and train them up. And basically that is what the ancient Spartans did. At the age of 7 years old, they would take boys away from their families and then they would train them. And fortunately, the Supreme Court rejected that view in this case. And they said that, this idea that you would submerge the individual to create ideal citizens he says in the court's opinion, this is wholly different from those upon which our institutions rest. And it hardly will be affirmed that any legislature could impose such restrictions upon the people of a state without doing violence to both the letter and the spirit of the Constitution. So the Supreme Court made it really clear at that time, the United States is not going to embrace this idea that children belong to everybody, that children don't belong to their families. And the Supreme Court has recognized time and time again that parents have a fundamental right to direct the upbringing, the education, and the care of their children. Of course, now we see more radical ideologies than at any other time, I think, that people can remember, being forced upon children under threat of punishment sometimes. And that is, violating parental rights in a very pervasive way and very dangerous ways. And I can talk more about the harms later. But just to say that, yes, this idea has been around for a long time, but the Supreme Court has rejected it because parents are the ones who know their children and love their children the best, and children belong to families led by parents. They don't belong to the state. They don't belong to all of society.
Nicole, children belong to their parents, not to the community.
I mean, that is what we have seen over the past year, 18 months, right? I mean, the mama bear revolution. These are people raising up saying, over my dead body, will you take my child from me? How dare you, right? I mean, this has spanned racial lines. This has spanned political lines. People who are rearing up saying, you cannot and you will not take my child from me. You will not interfere between my child and myself. The buck stops with me. And it is, I'm so glad, our Supreme Court has stood firm, has defended this right. It is worth noting, right? I mean, there are attempts to chip away at this from the local level, from school boards, from states, as well as on the international level. I mean, there is a reason that, the UN has their Convention on the Rights of the Child. America is the one country that has not ratified this because of concerns, that we have about this undermining parental rights. And so this is very much a case of the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. We have to keep paying attention to these issues so that they're not able to lay the groundwork and create the precedent that then allows people to interfere between a parent and a child in the future.
You're exactly right. Rebecca, I know I've heard you talk about the many layers that take our parental rights away. And I know you talk about the unions, but there's so many special interest groups out there that are just trying to just tell us that we're the experts. Let us educate your kids and just send them to school and just leave it at that.
That's right. And it's been going on for a very long time. And this has been over 100 years that this long march to infiltrate our institutions and our agencies to really change America from the inside out. It's truly troubling. It's the reason we named our movie, Whose Children Are They? Because this is such a battle right now. The children belong to the parents, but the state wants to take them over. The comment about the United Nations, we have a gal in our movie who actually lobbies at the United Nations as part of an NGO, and she's there to defend parental rights and defend children. She told us that the F word at the United Nations is family. The F word is family. So they're out to undermine the family, as are the unions, there are hundreds of special interest groups that are involved running our schools. Why are special interest groups running our schools? Why is a union there? Why is the ACLU there? Why is Planned Parenthood there? Planned Parenthood has contracts with many schools across the nation. So when you think about all these special interest groups, and they all just happen to have the same worldview of this humanist worldview of collectivism, that your kid belongs to them. They want to get a hold of your kid. Why are they controlling our schools? Why are they controlling our government and our agencies? So that's the focus I think we need to do, is get them out. Parents should be in control. And if the public school system says you're not in control, parent, pull your kid out. because parents are the ones that have the authority, not the state, not these agencies, not these special interest groups.
You're exactly right. And that's why tonight is so important that we talk about my child. And I say this over and over when I speak to parents, is that just because I send my 3 children who are in 7th grade and I have 2 in 11th, just because I send them to a government public school, the moment they walk into those front doors, it doesn't mean I hand over my rights as a parent to that government school. And it's important that we identify some of these key words we're talking about tonight, but you need to really understand what is the legal term, where does it say in the Constitution, what are some of these court cases that you'll hear these ladies talk about, so that you know how to equip yourself and protect yourself as a parent, because these are our kids. They don't belong to the government, and we are in a battle right now. So I want to really jump into, for parents, and I'll start with Emily on this, and we'll go around. But Emily, what does the Constitution and what is the legal definition of the parent's role in the upbringing of their child, especially as it relates to education? So I know there's some court cases out there, but there's also some areas in the Constitution that parents can lean on.
So parental rights are rooted in the 14th Amendment in the Due Process Clause. And that is what the Supreme Court has cited in that case that I mentioned, Meyer versus Nebraska, and also another really important case, Pierce versus Society of Sisters from Oregon. That's where the court said that, children are not mere creatures of the state, and that parents have a high duty to provide for the education of their children. And so parental rights are fundamental rights, which means that they should be treated with the highest level of judicial review, which is called strict scrutiny. Unfortunately, there was a case in 2000 that sort of, the justices split in that opinion, in Troxel versus Granville. And while they reaffirmed that parental rights are a fundamental right, they did not clearly establish that it should be treated with strict scrutiny. Only Justice Thomas said that. And that's really important because the courts should be treating parental rights with that high level of scrutiny. And that scrutiny is upon the government. That means the government has to demonstrate that its interests are compelling interests. And so since that case in 2000, there have been a variety of standards used in the lower courts, the other federal courts and the state courts. And so right now we have a situation in the United States where 31 states have recognized that parental rights need to be treated with strict scrutiny, either by a state statute or through the precedents of their courts. But that means that it's not clearly treated that way in every state, and it's not clearly treated that way in federal courts. So there's a lot of work left to be done, both by litigators, and it also can be established through legislation.
Great. That's a lot of information. So again, that court case that you were talking about, the other one was, I wrote that down.
The 2000 case is the Troxel versus Granville case.
Okay, and the Pierce
And
versus
I'll
Society.
put that in the notes.
Okay, and so I really recommend for parents to go back and really pull these cases so that when you are talking to your administrators, we can be educated on what our parental rights are so that they know that we're not ignorant to the law. Nicole, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, just another case I think for people to kind of think about is Wisconsin v. Yoder, which is from 1972. And so in that, the court held that Wisconsin's compulsory education law violated an Amish father's right to take his 15-year-old children out of school to complete their education in an Amish way home. And so in addition to the cases that Emily has already referenced, Meyer v. Nebraska and Pierce v. Society of Sisters, I mean, there's a lot of precedent about this. And This is something that even as recently as this past term, there was a case that came up in Pennsylvania. People think of it as the swearing cheerleader case, BLV Mahanoy. It was where the cheerleader swore off campus on Snapchat. And we filed a brief very much targeted at this issue on the 14th Amendment about, at what point does the school's authority end and does the family's authority start? Because we have started to see school after school, both in higher ed as well as now in K-12 settings, assert massive jurisdiction over every element of a student's life. This was an incident where a student, swore on social media on a weekend in a private setting at like a 7-Eleven or something in Pennsylvania. And the school said, this is our business. And that's the problem, right? Because at what point is it not your business? I mean, when I used to run a group called Speech First in the higher ed setting, and I mean, there are University of Michigan used to say anything that happens in the city of Ann Arbor falls within our purview. University of Illinois said anything that, even if you're on spring break in Alabama and you break a window, that's under our purview. I mean, these are powers that local police forces don't grant themselves, yet we're seeing public schools with our tax dollars assert that kind of power. And so it's really important for us to be very vigilant about where those lines are drawn. And when they start to try and push and push and push, it kind of reminds me of in Jurassic Park when the raptors throwing themselves against the fence to see if it's electrified. We have to fight back and we have to say, no, you may not, because they will keep trying. And we have to pay attention to that, because once they find a little bit of weakness, they're going to try and exploit it.
Exactly. And Rebecca, I'm gonna kind of bounce it over from the perspective of a teacher. What is the role and responsibility of a teacher, and when does that cross the line? And what should, to kind of give a perspective of what to expect to parents, what's normal and not normal?
Sure. Well, the true role of a teacher is to support the parents. The true role of a teacher is to educate a child well and to teach a child, to be kind. Teachers were always supposed to model and teach virtue. We didn't teach religion, but we taught virtue. American schools, we had the 10 Commandments hanging on the wall. Why? Because that leads to a virtuous culture when you don't murder and when you obey your mother and your father and when you don't lie. So as a teacher, my job was always educate the children well, model and teach virtue, support the parents, constantly communicate with the parents. Teachers are a partner to parents, but what's happened is, thanks to all these special interest groups, particularly the unions, they've told teachers, oh, you're in charge. Oh, they're your kid. Oh, they're everybody's kid. Oh, you're the expert. That's a bunch of baloney. Parents are the expert. Parent is the expert on his or her child or children, and teachers are there to support.
So, and thank you for bringing that perspective to this conversation. Nicole, I kind of want to go into what are some examples that you are seeing in today's environment where we do have the bad actors. We have some teachers that are overstepping their role, right, Rebecca? And we have administrators we know that are overstepping their roles. What are some examples of that you're seeing across the nation, Nicole?
Sure. I mean, we're definitely seeing schools that are acting in direct, opposition to families. They are trying intentionally to undermine the role of the family and the role of parents. I think we see this most vividly in the context of gender ideology, where there are schools that are transitioning children behind parents' backs. Recently, we had a tip from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where the district told teachers during a teacher training session that it is not the right of parents to know their child's gender. So many, dozens, we have tips from across the country of districts that are maintaining 2 separate sets of medical records. There are teachers that are being instructed, that call the child Jim at school and then the child is Jane at home. Don't tell the parents. Parents or teachers that are having this crisis of conscience. I mean, some of them who are breaking down. I mean, we've had teachers come to us and say, I don't know what to do. This is morally wrong, but they're being told by their districts to do so. I mean, that to me that's so vivid. But I mean, and a lot of the sexual topics, teaching children their LGBTs before they're able to read their ABCs. These are issues, these are very sensitive topics that are best dealt with, gently through a family's perspective. But instead we see, teachers that sort of feel it as their mission where well, that's what the family thinks, and that's wrong. And so, they may be Catholic, they believe in traditional marriage, that it's between a man and a woman, that there are two sexes. That's incorrect. We have to kind of deprogram that. And it's that working against a family instead of, as Rebecca said, working with the family, where they have really betrayed this sacred trust. I mean, we think about schools acting in loco parentis, in place of the parents. And now you are working to undermine the family, you're working to undermine the parents. And in that case, you have broken that sacred trust. And so it's little wonder that so many families have started to flee the public school system because that trust is broken, and it's very difficult to get it back once that's gone.
Yeah, and in my home state of Florida, we just passed House Bill 1557 that protects our K through third graders on what's age appropriate when it comes to having these conversations about gender identity, sex comprehension, and so forth. And I'm so thankful that we have Governor Ron DeSantis and governors like him that are willing to stand with parents, because this parental rights bill has put him under attack, and every legislator that has supported it. But I'm going to tell you one thing. With B.E.S.T, we are going to be advocating in every state that we get a bill like this, because it doesn't answer everything, all the problems that we're seeing, but it is a step in the right direction. And we need more leaders like this to step up to the plate. Emily, I'm going to jump over to you, because speaking of states, every state has a constitution for that state, or they have state statutes. But what is a common definition that a parent can find that defines what public education is in state statute?
Well, I mean, I think that it really is dependent on each state. So it's hard for me to give a general definition. I can talk a little bit about, I want to just sort of follow up on something Nikki said. If I could do that right now, and then maybe someone else, maybe Rebecca can say more about the state definition of education. But to what Nikki was saying about they're called gender support plans, where a school would treat a child as transgender and either conceal it from the parents or actively deceive the parents. And ADF has filed two cases in Wisconsin, and a demand letter in Virginia because of these policies in school districts. And I just wanted to point out that the Biden administration issued an executive order on the first day of the administration, mandating transgender policies in public schools around the country. They're about to issue a new interpretation of Title IX of the 1972 educational amendments that's going to also affect all schools. And their new rule is likely to reinterpret sex to include gender identity. And so that's going to make it punishable if a school treats a child according to their biological sex instead of their gender identity. I hope that this is clear what I'm saying. It's a little bit complicated, but under the Obama administration, there was a Dear Colleague letter that was sent out to all schools that reinterpreted sex to mean gender identity. And under that letter, they had cited model policies in that letter. And those model policies explicitly said that schools should not tell parents if a child is identifying as transgender, and schools should not tell parents if they are using a different name and different pronoun for that child at school. And so we can, I think, reasonably expect that when this new interpretation of Title IX comes out, that schools across the country are going to think that they have to start, treating children as transgender if they are confused about their gender, and they are going to, keep parents in the dark. And this is so serious. We were just at a Heritage Foundation event where a mother from California shared the story of how her child's school transitioned her daughter against her wishes, ultimately recommended that the daughter go into foster care. And while the daughter was in foster care, the mom was seeking mental health treatment, wasn't able to get it, and the daughter committed suicide.
Mhm.
Gender dysphoria is such a serious condition because it is a mental health struggle. And unfortunately, there's another case that was just filed in Florida by another firm, Child and Parental Rights Campaign, on behalf of a father whose daughter tried to commit suicide twice. And when you're treating a child as transgender, that is deepening their sense of gender dysphoria and their emotional distress over, the incongruence they feel with their bodies. So I just wanted to explain that because I think we are finding out about a lot of these policies, but we're not finding out about a lot of the policies. And I think we should expect that these policies are everywhere, whether we are finding out about them or not. And so parents really need to be proactive in trying to find out what their school's policy is and making sure that the schools have to notify the parents and seek parents' consent for any discussion with a child about gender identity.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. We do have to really understand, what does the school board policy say? But if you do not have a policy within your state, that's why us parents need to be our child's lobbyist, right? We think of lobbying as some stiff suit, someone from DC, but parents, we are the best lobbyists for our kids. And that's why we are training parents how to lobby their legislators, because we need to make sure that if it's not in policy, it's not in state statute, that we have to protect our parental rights and make sure that bills like that are passing here in Florida and around the country are put in place, because we know that through the Biden administration, the Obama administration, these things are coming in really, really quickly. Okay, I know this has been a fantastic conversation. But I have two more questions, and then we're going to open this up to our audience, and we're going to answer a couple of questions. But I wanted to ask you, what can parents do to protect their rights if they think their school district has abused their authority? I think that's important for us to talk about. Nicole?
I mean, I think about what the great Dick Armey used to say: politics goes to he who shows up. You have to show up. You have to pay attention, be vigilant, ask questions. And this doesn't mean like you start out like, hey, I don't like this handout, boom, federal lawsuit, right? Like, start small, talk to your teacher, ask questions, right? Figure out what the curriculum is. Let them know that you're keeping an eye on them, right? Because they're not always really thrilled when you're keeping, you know what the handouts are, you know what the readings are. And we all know, look, it doesn't matter what the letter is next to your child's name. Children do better when parents are involved, period. Your child is learning something, they're doing a lesson on Germany. Well, you can have German food at home. You can watch a movie about it. You can read a book, right? You can supplement what they're doing. Your child will do better. So you want to be a constructive partner in your child's education, right? But if you don't get the answers you want from your teacher, then go up to the principal, go up to the superintendent, go up to the school board, right? But you have to ask questions, right? And show up at the school board meetings, put them on the spot. I mean, these people, despite what some of them say, work for you. They are elected officials, right? They are paid for with taxpayer dollars. And again, if you're not getting the answers you want, reach out to us, reach out to ADF, reach out to Rebecca. I am a huge fan of filing public records requests, and that's something that they super, super hate, right? You can get emails, you can get text messages, you can figure out, where did this lesson plan come from? Who approved it? What was the process? How much was spent on this? And so there's a lot out there, but I think part of it is just keeping your eyes open and asking questions to start with. But you can do this. We have seen so much change affected over the past year. I want everybody on this, who's watching, to know you can make a difference. This very much is an issue of one person can change the world, and you can make a difference for your school district. So please know, you can make a difference, and we want to help you. So please, reach out to us at Defending Ed if we can ever be of assistance or be a resource for you too.
Absolutely. Ladies, one final question. When should a parent take it to that next level and seek legal advice? And what are those first steps to consider?
Well, I mean, if they think that their child's rights are being violated or their own rights are being violated, they should definitely, submit a request. They can submit a request to ADF or, other law firms. But I think, there are so many cases right now where we hear of students being really indoctrinated. And by that, I mean, the students are being not just told a particular viewpoint or ideology, whether it's critical race theory or transgender ideology, they're actually being threatened with punishment if they don't go along and endorse this view. And that does cross the line into indoctrination. And so we are filing lawsuits on behalf of courageous parents. We filed a lawsuit in Virginia on behalf of 5 families. They're challenging a critical race theory program in Albemarle, Virginia, which is, again, threatening your children with punishment if they don't go along with these really radical ideas about race. If they think that their child is being treated unequally simply because of their race or their religion or sex, I mean, there definitely are avenues that parents have to take the public schools to court. And we have seen that, schools are being found to be in violation of the law. And so there are good precedents being set. And we're really encouraged to see all the parents that are stepping up.
Yes, it's going to take each and every one of us. We're up against an army of special interest groups. And I'm going to tell you, 2022 is about the new special interest group in town, and that's the parents. There are a lot more parents than there are teacher union members and these special interest groups. And I'm going to tell you, just like you all know, you do not want to cross this mama bear when you're trying to harm my babies. Rebecca, and we're gonna transition now, everyone, over into some questions. We're gonna have Emily, Nicole, and Rebecca answer a few questions. I keep seeing a lot of questions come up through the chat. They want to know, they missed your documentary. What are the steps that they can take if they want to see it, and when is it going to air again?
Sure, I'd love to share that, but can I first say,
Yes.
the majority of teachers hate the teachers' unions. They resent them. We were forced to fund them for over 40 years. Our lawsuits freed them. Most teachers don't know they've been freed. So one of the best things you can do, parents, adopt every teacher you know that's a decent person. Put your arm around them. You can go to our website, forkidsandcountry.org. We walk you through how to do it. It takes 3 minutes to learn how to adopt a teacher. Take the teacher to see the movie, give the teacher a copy of my book, take them on our website. We walk them through how to get out of the union. They don't know they've been freed. So help them, because when teachers stand with you too, okay, now we can get the unions the heck out of our schools and all those special interest groups. So let's stand together. As far as the movie goes, so Whose Children Are They? You can just go to whosechildrenarethey.com. That's the movie website. It launched only one night in theaters on March 14th. Now, from now through April 14th, it's available. You could bring it to a school or a church or community venue. You have to have 10 or more people, but you just go to whosechildrenarethey.com and click on the button that says bring to my school or church. And that's how you get started there. Starting April 15th, it will be available via premium streaming. So if you want to know that, you can just sign up for updates and you'll get an email from the movie website letting you know when it's available via premium streaming. And then as time goes on, it'll be available in other forms and probably eventually on DVD, but that'll take a while. So whosechildrenarethey.com.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for reminding us that we do need to support our teachers that are fighting the good fight. They are up against the administrators in a system, and a lot of them are staying silent out of fear. And there's another group out there that we need to also rally around, and that is our school board members that are the lone wolves on these school boards that are taking the heat, taking the punches to try to defend our parental rights, what's good, preventing some of this curriculum coming in. And I'm going to tell you, I'm watching these school board elections right now that's coming up in Florida, Georgia, Arizona, and they're coming after these school board members that have been fighting the good fight for us. So not only do we need to support our teachers, it's time for us to I know if you're not political, it's time for you to get out. It's time for you to either donate to a candidate that's been doing the right thing for you. It's time for you to volunteer. It's time for you to host them a meet and greet and have a fundraiser for them. But we all have a part to play, and we know these decisions are local, and that's so crucial right now. Zach, I know we have some questions, and you're on mute.
Yes, we do indeed. One question I saw come up just a few minutes ago was from Dr. Karen. She wanted to know, Emily, if you had any thoughts about states using the 10th Amendment as grounds to push back on some of the federal overreach in education, how that stands as a strategy. And she mentioned that Governor DeSantis is often very public and is trying to do this, and that she applauds his efforts.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, Laura, Governor DeSantis is doing great things. He signed the Parental Bill of Rights and also this new bill, 1557. And so I think, Florida is becoming a model for the country. The Parents' Bill of Rights established that high legal standard of strict scrutiny for parental rights. And now there are, these enumerated rights that protect parents' rights in education. So I think that, Florida is setting a great example. To just briefly go back to the question that you had asked about what is the role of the state in education? I mean, the state has the role of providing public education and setting standards for education. But what we're seeing now is government overreach. The state is crossing the line from providing education into indoctrination. And that's why it's so important for other states to do what Florida has done and make sure that that strict scrutiny standard is there in the law and that parents' rights in education are established. Opt-outs, opt-ins, curriculum transparency, making sure that no school can treat a child's mental health without the involvement of the parents, addressing the critical theory, the identity, the sexual orientation, gender identity, the comprehensive sexual education. Now is the time really for parents to establish their rights in state law if it isn't there already.
Laura, you're muted now.
I'm sorry, I apologize for that. And Zach, we had another question. I thought I saw one in there for Nicole.
I want to combine two.
Okay.
Real quick that just came in. Summer asked about the panel's thoughts on the money follows the child model, which we would call, radical or full school choice here with B.E.S.T. And Jenny Landwehr mentioned moving your kids to a private school being the best way to fight this stuff. I think those two are integrally linked. And
Totally.
Yeah.
Big fans of school choice. Like long time, my husband used to litigate school choice with the Institute for Justice. I think school choice is part of it. Certainly competition is a real important element to this. That being said, we have started to see a lot of private schools are as bad, if not worse, than public schools. And so I have been telling people, I think that transparency and school choice, it has to be a 1-2 punch. Because if you know what your school's teaching, and you can't do anything about it, that stinks. And then if you can move, but then you get into a school that's even worse and crazier than the first place, that stinks too. Because remember, private schools, they're not state actors. And so in private schools, in many cases, you don't have the same kinds of protections, the First Amendment, Title VI, Title IX, that you do actually in a public school that is beholden to state dollars. And so I think this is very much a case of caveat emptor. Look, if somebody wants to send their child voluntarily to Social Justice Country Day, God bless, that's your choice. I wouldn't do it, but that's your call. But I think where we're seeing a lot of parents send their children to private school expecting a rigorous education, and they're not getting it. It's kind of a bait and switch, right? They expect that it's going to be this amazing experience, and then it's just as crazy pants as the public schools are. And so I definitely, yes, school choice is, when districts, as we have seen districts hemorrhage students, right, for homeschooling, for private schools, I think it has started to wake up a lot of administrators, because they get money based on the number of students in their system. And so the more students that leave, the more they think, ooh, we need to triangulate. We need to really change things around so that we don't keep losing students. I think that brings a level of accountability into it, but that means, privates are not like the be all end all. And, also, I mean, let's realize in some parts of the country, there just aren't that many options, right? You live in rural West Texas, there are not a ton of private school options. And so I am fully in favor of universal school choice, but let's be mindful that not everyone can or will take advantage of that, even if it is an option. And so I think it's incumbent on us to try and make all of these schools, both public and private, better at the same time.
Yeah, I fully agree with that because not all settings work for all kids. I have 4 kids and I know every one of my children are different and they learn different and they thrive in different learning environments. So we are out of time, ladies. You all have been amazing. I appreciate Rebecca, Emily, and Nicole for jumping on tonight. I know that you're extremely busy. I can tell that Nicole is actually, it looks like you might be in a hotel room tonight.
In a hotel room.
And so I know how busy you are, and I really do appreciate you taking the time because this is something that our parents really need to grab a hold of and understand. We talk about parental rights quite a bit, but do we really know what our parental rights are? And I hope that this webinar has shed some light on this. And I would encourage you, if you're on here tonight and you think that this is valuable information, which I do, share the link with your friends. But what they have to do is they do have to sign up so that they can get a link to these webinars. Not all our webinars are public, so you do have to sign up for that. Last week we did have a fantastic webinar on social and emotional learning. The only way you can access that is you have to have your friends sign up. We've had hundreds of individuals over the week take a look at that webinar, and I'm anticipating the same thing with this one. I'm going to turn this over to Zach to give a little housekeeping details on how individuals can find a copy of this and share it with their friends. So thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, everyone. So yes, a little bit of housekeeping. Tomorrow morning, everyone who is currently registered, which includes all of you wonderful attendees, will be receiving a follow-up email directly from myself with information on how to view this recording and the previous week's recording. I don't speak for Laura, but it's a view-only link. So I don't mind if you share it out with other friends of yours. It is one link. Anyone who has that link can access the folder. We have it separated by subject, so it's easy to navigate. And that is where you'll be able to view the recording of these parents exposing the culture war in education webinars.
So next week, we do have a fantastic webinar, and I'm going to just jump in here, Zach. March 29th, we have comprehensive sex ed. We want you to understand that. Where's it coming from? How's that being funded? And we're going to tie it to the pornography that we're finding in our libraries and how that's filtrating into our schools also. That is next week, March 29th. And then on April 5th, what Emily was speaking about, and I think I had heard Nicole speak on this when I was up in DC, is the Title IX interpretation. We are going to be discussing that on April 5th. And I think that's also an important webinar for you to get on. And the webinars that we're having over the next 5 weeks, this isn't just for parents. If you know anyone that's running for school board or school board members, they need to be jumping onto these webinars, because I'm going to guarantee you that this information that we're sharing, if you're a school board member, they're not sharing that. Your superintendent isn't sharing this information with you. Your assistant superintendent or curriculum is not sharing this information with you. And this is a way that you can be self-informed and educated as a school board member, and it's your job to do the homework. So anyways, sorry, I jumped in there again, Zach. I promised I wouldn't do that, but I did.
It's more than all right. So I think that's all we have. Laura took my ending.
Sorry, I get so excited about this. We have a lot of good stuff coming up.
It's hard not to, with all the great work that B.E.S.T and Alliance Defending Freedom, Parents Defending Ed, and for Kids and Country are doing. So thank you everyone for hopping on. We will see you next week. Tell a friend, send them the registration link. There can never be too many people learning more about the culture wars in our schools and how to fight back.
Yes.
So thanks
Have a
everyone.
great night, everyone.